Well, welcome to everybody to a webinar on the Masters in Community Development Program, and also an opportunity to hear and talk to one of our instructors, Denise Viera, who will be teaching a course the January term on public safety and community development. I'm going to take about the first 15 minutes to review the program because we have people on this webinar who are both current students and also prospective students, people who are potentially interested in coming into the program next year. So I'm going to start with a 15-minute introduction to the program for those who aren't familiar with it, and then move to an introduction of Denise. And I'll ask her a few questions. We'll have discussion. People are encouraged to ask questions on their own. Right now, everybody is in mute mode. If you have questions as I go along, Robin Husledge is also on this call. She'll also be monitoring the chat box. So feel free to put questions in the Q&A section of the webinar here, and we will monitor those questions, and I'll stop a few times along the way to answer any questions on the program. So let's jump right in. I'm going to come back and actually do a more formal introduction of Denise. Let me just start by saying that the Masters in Community Development Program is a program of the Carsey School of Public Policy at the University of New Hampshire. We're one of 3 master's degree programs offered by the Carsey School. The Masters in Community Development Program is an online program using a cohort model. What that means is you start the program with a group of students. That cohort is usually between 20 and 25 students. I think this year's cohort is 22 students. You start with an introductory course and a project course, and you go through 4 terms with the same people. The value of this is you get to know the people better, you work in small groups with the people, and you build some cohesion as a cohort. It's a model we've used for a long time and one that we like. The program consists of a series of courses. The capstone project, which I'll talk about in a little more detail, is a 4-course sequence in which you actually do a project in your home community. And then there are a number of courses that relate to specific skill building in the areas of management, finance, policy, and community economic development. The course is designed for practitioners. There's an incredible range of students in the program in terms of a diverse group of people by age, by geography, by racial and ethnic background. It's really one of the great strengths of the program is all the great people you get to meet and the experiences they have, and the ability for people in the class and faculty to share information and share contacts, connections, that sort of thing. The curriculum is made up of core courses. The Integrative Approaches is a course that I co-teach with Lee Farrow, and it's an introduction to issues in community development, policy, and practice. Then there are courses in organizational and fiscal management, economic and public policy. There are a series of electives, community development finance. This public safety and community development is an elective course that we're offering this January term. And then there is the 4-course project sequence. The capstone projects have a series of an introduction to project design, planning, implementation, monitoring, evaluation. You cover a range of skills in the program. In the project. And again, we really encourage people to do something practical. Many people do it within their own organization, develop a project that's part of their organization's work. Others develop it in the community outside their organization. Some people do projects that are something new that they just want to start up, an idea that they have, and here's an opportunity over 4 terms to have support and coursework supporting the development of a project that you would do in your community. So we start typically with a logic model, mapping out input, output, activities, and outcomes for your project. Many of you are familiar with this model. And as I said, there's a series of courses that ask you to develop outcomes that you want to achieve over the 14 months in the program, and then a series of courses that follow that. As we said, it's a 36 credit program. 9 courses are core courses, required courses. There are 3 electives, and the capstone project is a 4-course sequence that's part of the 9 course required. The program can take as little as 14 months, and I would say most of the people, but not all, probably about 2/3 of the people who start the program finish in 14 months. But you can also spread it out over time, and the cost is the same regardless if you take it over 14 months or 24 months, and it really depends on what other commitments you have, how many courses you want to take in a given term. So people who take it over 24 months, there are certain terms where they'll just take a single course. So there is flexibility in terms of when you take the courses and the ability to spread it out over time to meet your schedule. The application requirements, it's an online application, and as you can see, the requirements for the application listed below. The bachelor's degree transcript, 3 letters of reference, a personal statement about your goals in the program, a resume, and application fee. We do not require the GREs. The TOEFL is required for international applicants. We encourage people to start in the summer term, which is generally the first week of June, because that's when most of the people in the cohort start. The application deadline is April 15th for that. However, we do have people who take courses, 1 course or maybe 2 courses before to get a jump start, fulfill an elective requirement. So if you're interested and you haven't started the program, you can sign up for Denise's course. You'll learn more about that in just a minute, and start the program in the J term. The application deadline for that is December 15th. The cost of the program, you can see there, is $28,000 for New Hampshire residents, just over $31,000 for out-of-state residents. We do provide some financial assistance. Many, I'd say even most students get some kind of financial assistance from us, and we'll also work with others. We have arrangements with LISC and NeighborWorks that make contributions to education and have an agreement with our program. And we also provide needs-based scholarships through the Carsey School directly, and then there are a variety of student loan programs available, including federal student loans. So we will work with you to develop a financial plan for the program as well. Let me stop for a moment and, Robin, see if there are questions that people have. Anything come up in the Q&A?
Well, let me take a look. One question is, can you explain more about the capstone project, including the types of capstone projects people do? And then they said, do you assign these capstones, or do students pursue something they're more interested in on their own?
Right. So I'm trying to go back to the capstone project idea. So you pick your own capstone project. This is something that you don't have to have before you start the program. In fact, most people don't. They'll think about it. That first term is really a time to explore the options, to look into what is possible, to test out an idea, to have a discussion within your workplace about something that you might do within your workplace that would qualify as a project. So projects are not assigned. Projects are something you pick. It's not something you have to decide before you start the program. And in fact, much of the first term, in addition to an introduction to project, involves the exploration of project possibilities. Typically, people will formally pick a project at the end of that summer term.
Great, thanks. Another question is, what is the difference between the 14-month and the 24-month program?
Yeah, it's the same program. It's just that the courses are spread out over a longer period of time. So, for example, in the fall session, after the initial summer start date, which is when most of the people in the cohort start, and again, what we typically encourage, you could take 2 courses in the fall term. So there's the Project 2 course. If you just take one project, we encourage that. There's also the Economic Analysis for Community Development course. Most people take it then, but some people decide that they want to take one course at a time. So they would pick up the economics course the following fall. If you do that approach, if you take courses and postpone, you just take them at the same time the following year. So that the 24-month program means that you would finish at the end of May, 2 years after your June start date. And you would cycle through and take some of the courses the second time around.
Great. And I see one final question is, during the courses that are online, are there live online sessions, or is it all self-paced?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So it's primarily asynchronous. What that means is much of the work is done through a series of readings and assignments that you have. However, there are a number of group projects. So groups organize themselves at times that work for them. Some of the courses you are assigned a group. We'll try and mix it up, typically with balancing people who may have substantial experience in an area of those who are relatively new to it. Others, you can choose the group that you're part of. It really depends on the particular course. And then each of the courses meets once a week in the summer, twice a week in the fall and spring. Once every 2 weeks in the fall and spring for about a 60 to 90 minute Zoom session that's online, usually discussion oriented, a chance again for people to have talks both within small groups and within a larger group, to have questions answered. And also some of the courses, for example, in finance, where people are relatively new for it, the instructors will hold weekly tutorials online where they'll go through the assignments with people who have questions about the assignment, don't understand, have questions and don't understand something very well. So to answer the question, there are sessions in person. You can count on a session every 2 weeks. So if you take 2 courses in the fall and spring, generally it means you'll have one online synchronous session via Zoom per week of 60 to 90 minutes. The rest asynchronous work that you do on your own or with a small group that you organize and then turn in. Good question.
Great. Thanks. That's all I see for now, Michael.
Okay. And this is just some examples of where people are working now, and many of them it's where they worked. Andronika Morris, who's with the Executive Director of Housing NOLA. That's where she was also working when she was in the program. That's where she did her project. You see Tyler with the Welcome Home Coalition in Oregon. A number of people working in affordable housing, community development finance. We have people with CDFIs, nonprofit organizations, public agencies, pretty widespread in terms of the type of work that people do. So let's go back and if there aren't questions, there may be more. Let's talk to Denise a little bit. So Denise Viera is an instructor in our program, has been teaching for a number of years. Denise, how long have you been teaching in the various incarnations of community development and CED program?
Off and on, at least a dozen.
Okay.
Yeah, at least 12, maybe more.
Great. So Denise is a practitioner. Most of the instructors we have are doing the work in the communities they serve. Denise has an illustrious history in community development. As you can see right now, she's the senior advisor in the Department of Justice and has worked on civil rights compliance and coordination issues. But in her earlier work career, worked in housing. If I'm remembering correctly, Denise, you were the director of housing for the city of Hartford for a while. So So pretty widespread experience in the field of community development. Has been working in the field over 25 years in a variety of positions, but with the Department of Justice now since 2011, we have on there. And the course that she teaches for us now is called Public Safety, Community Development, Violence, Trauma, Justice, and Community Economic Development. And you can see on the screen a little description of that right now. Again, I should add for people who are thinking about registering the course, if you're already in the master's program, it's just an elective course. If you are considering the program or just want to take the course as a standalone, you can. It's a 3-credit graduate course, and we offer it through continuing education. If you take it as a continuing education course, you can also transfer it to the master's degree as an elective course in the master's degree program. So it fulfills some of the credit requirements that you have for the program. So Denise, let me start by asking you, most of the people in our program are working in community development, meaning generally affordable housing, nonprofit management, policy work, community health, range of issues that you more typically associate with community development, economic development. How is a course in public safety going to be relevant to people's work?
Michael, as you mentioned, and I hope everyone can hear me because my computer's been a little laggy today. So if not, just raise your hand and someone can let me know that, and we'll figure out another option. But Michael, as you mentioned, just sort of my background in this area, I originally actually came to this work as someone who worked as a community organizer, and then sort of saw some of the economic underpinnings of, it's great to have a rent strike, but then if you just put the landlord out of business, now where do you live? And got more involved in community economic development, and subsequently learned that it's very difficult to do the other type of work that we do in a community where people don't feel safe, and where there may not be an acknowledgement, even on the part of the organizations that are trying to work in that community, of some of the historical relationships, particularly with law enforcement, whether that is the police department or just the general way that sort of rule of law works. So this could also be not just local law enforcement, but even federal law enforcement, and a sense of people feeling that they aren't safe. So if you're trying to say to someone, come out to a community meeting, and they, say in my neighborhood, we don't go out at night and your meetings are going to be in the evening. If people don't have access, or they feel that they just generally don't feel safe participating because there may be other people who would know that, would find that, oh, you were on that meeting, even if it's virtual, and they know who those people are, that can impede your ability to do good organizing. So there's just a lot of different places where the whole concept of public safety really interfaces and can either impede our ability to do effective community development, broadly defined, or it can actually help it along. The other thing is that often people have experienced both individually and then collectively, and in fact, even historically, traumas that will get in the way of the ability for us to build strong initiatives and programs. So those are some of the kinds of things that we actually talk about in the course. It is very multidisciplinary, and I think that the idea of, regardless of what area you may be working in, having that understanding and a little bit of a background and maybe some grounding in how the sense that people that you're working with feel that they're in safe spaces can really help the work that we all do, regardless of which perspective we may be bringing to or coming from.
Right. So Denise, your course if you read through the more detailed outline, there are a lot of theories expressed. I mean, you talk about. I should mention as well that Denise is an attorney, has a law degree, and so she's multi-talented. But there, a lot of the course talks about things like access to justice, rule of law, criminal justice systems, and their basis and all that. But as you know, the people in our program are often interested in practical applications. How do I use what I learn? How can I use that to improve life in the community? How will the course help students who are focused on practice?
Well, Michael, this is an extremely multidisciplinary course. And I don't think that I could do anything but that, Yes, so I studied political science and communications, and journalism as an undergraduate, and then, came to programs like this and studied community economic development and studied some urban planning and then went to law school. And, and I'm like, I think really that's not what, maybe I'm more of a sociologist. I don't know. So for me, whenever we're looking at these issues, it's important to look across a lot of different dimensions. And so part of the idea of, yes, that theory is there. And it's one of the things that I really love about this particular program is that marriage of theory and practice. So it's not just let's go out there and, throw pots at the wall, see if anything sticks. It's let's look at what may have worked before and why, what didn't work before and why, and that kind of grounding. And so the idea of looking at theories, particularly things like rule of law, when I first started teaching this course, I used to particularly use the United States as an example of a system where it's very much about rule of law, right? I mean, there's a whole system of laws and they apply to everyone. And over time, I've had to tweak that a little bit because, at times it seemed like maybe that's not of course, the United States wasn't the only model that we look at, but it is important, therefore, to be able to say, what do we mean about a social contract that says there are certain rules out there? Just as a very quick example of how this can really matter in work that people may be doing, I'll say on the street, but often this is a place where this problem is, a reason that there aren't great streets. So when I first got to the Department of Justice, I used to work in a program called Operation Weed and Seed. And we had sites, about 300 sites all across neighborhoods that we worked in across the country. Some of them were tribal sites on reservations. So if you've ever done much economic development work on U.S. reservations, you'll find that the laws are quite different because there's actually sovereignty for the tribes. One of the things that means is that the United Commercial Code does not apply. So without having a whole law school course on this, why does that matter? It matters for this kind of reason. If you, for example, need to buy a truck, you go and buy the truck and you get a loan. And the person who makes the loan can go and register the fact that they have this loan, which helps them feel secure that you're going to pay the loan back, or if not, they can take your truck. And that is all based on the Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC. Well, if there isn't that, the idea of access to capital is a completely different kind of circumstance. So if you loan money to someone who just wants to buy a truck on a reservation and there's no Uniform Commercial Code there, then banks are much less likely to say that, for example, that they want to make that loan. So the operation of law, the network of rule of law, whether or not there is actually access to justice, varies depending upon what sort of that social contract is. So the idea of understanding the theories underpinning that is really important to then be able to say, what tools do we need in my community so that everybody can feel like there's a just society. And so much of the actual practice of what we're doing is about trying to create a just society. And so what does that mean? And what does that mean across time? And particularly in this time, of course, for example, even if we're just looking at the United States, what does that mean in terms of the way that the criminal justice system in most of it, how was the criminal justice system originally even set up? And what did that mean particularly for people who were of color or poorer people?
Right. Well,
and so understanding some of that really helps.
Yeah. So let me, since you've hinted at it, let's raise it directly. Nick, I'd also say there are only 11 of us. So this is my last question, and I want to open it up to the other participants. So if you could unmute people, we'll do that after this question. So what I was getting at, Denise, obviously, protests going on now related to police brutality, the multiple incidents that we see. It's not that that's new. It's just that they are more visible to more people now. But many communities where our students live are seeing these protests. Will this be addressed in the course, or how will this be addressed in the course? How we look at some of the current issues that are coming to a head now?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to pretend that, we're going to be able to just answer all of this, right? We're going to, between the end of December and February, we're going to fix this thing that has been an issue in the United States since before the founding of the United States. But we definitely will be talking about some of the history of the criminal justice system, how that has led to mass incarceration and the use of incarceration, particularly when you look at the United States, how we are so over-reliant on incarceration as our model for dealing with people who break the social contract. And okay. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I was going to say, because it seemed like everything went out, and I just was that me because I seem to be popping in and out.
We just made it bigger. I took away the screen so we could see more of you and less of the slide.
Oh, okay. I wanted to make sure I didn't just get cut off or something. So so we will talk about things like the historical basis of mass incarceration. This particular term, or I know it's the J term, we will specifically be looking at some things from, not that we couldn't have done this before. Sometimes what I've done with this course, frankly, is it's been what are the issues that people are particularly concerned about right now. So we have previously looked at things like disproportionality and racial profiling. This time I expected we probably will be dealing with things like mass incarceration and the issues around the whole defund the police movement. So we usually have at least one segment where we're talking about kind of what is the hot issue of the day that's related to this. And a lot of this has to do with how can we have more secure and predictable communities that people feel comfortable in. So yes, the idea of breaking that kind of cycle, dealing with the trauma, the community trauma that's behind that, and people's willingness to participate in other ways in the community when, again, do I feel safe, and who makes me feel safe? Who's providing different services in the country. So this can go back to who do we decide is a gang. I mean, one of the things I think is really interesting, this was just a couple of weeks ago that the FBI put out some information about domestic terrorism at the same time that there was some polling about domestic terrorism, and kind of ask people, which groups do you think are the biggest perpetrators of domestic terrorism in the United States right now, at least? And the numbers came out about people's perception being that Islamic jihadis were probably 75 to 80%. Then there was another maybe 20 that was white supremacists. But the FBI numbers actually show that that's the complete opposite. So who gets to feel safe and safe to do what kinds of things is really important for our work. So yes, we absolutely will be talking about issues of not just using the terms racial profiling or police brutality, because I think those are really loaded, but the ideas of what is appropriate and inappropriate in terms of use of force, and how, you know, what do people even mean when they're talking about profiling? Because there's an aspect of some police work where the idea of figuring out who's most likely to have done this thing makes a lot of sense. But at what point in time is that? I mean, you certainly want somebody doing that after the fact, right? But not necessarily so much before the fact. So using physical evidence, for example, as compared to eyewitness evidence, which is notoriously terrible. Just notoriously terrible. People always think I saw that thing and I remember it, and pretty much they don't. So, sort of touching on all of those kinds of topics is definitely something that we will do.
Great. So everybody can unmute themselves now if they want. If you have questions, anything you want to ask Denise, anything you want to ask me, please feel free to ask now. Just looking at the section here. Any comments? I don't see any further questions right now, Denise.
Okay. I guess I put everyone to sleep. Yay me.
No, I think
Not at all, Denise.
Sorry, is there a comment?
I just wanted to say, not at all, Denise.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm looking on the screen and it looks like everybody's muted though. So is that?
Well, they can unmute themselves now.
Oh, okay.
Hear me? I actually have a question.
Yeah, is that you, Ann?
Hi, this is Ann Lawson. Hi Denise. I am presently a student enrolled in the program, so this would be elective for me. And it sounds like you're covering a lot of ground. So my question is, in a relatively short period of a January term, how do you think you'll organize the offerings? What type of flow will there be to synchronous versus asynchronous parts of the course? I'm just trying to get a sense of how you'll fit it all in.
And I am still, candidly, I am still trying to work on the exact schedule. But typically, I mean, as someone who's been a student before, you know that the program is all very compressed. So I'm not frightened by the idea that this is a J-term course, but it does present different kinds of challenges doing it completely online, which I haven't done. But I will say this is a course that does require a lot of reading. I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't. There is a lot of reading, and we will definitely be meeting, and I would expect, because it is the J term, that we'll definitely be meeting at least once a week. And just depending upon what is working with the group, we may end up, that's synchronistic, and it may end up that it takes a couple of days in the week, whether we are all doing that or that it's in small groups, that people will need to get together. So that's largely how we do it. Yes, there is a lot of ground, and the reason that there is a lot of reading is so that when we do come together, either all of us or in smaller groups, that people have that information. Now, I will say that previously, what students have done is that they have divided up some of the reading with groups. I mean, so there'd be an expectation that everybody can talk about the readings on some level. But what they have done is said, okay, I'm going to do a kind of real skim, not I read the title, but a real skim of this particular article, for example, and someone else in my smaller group will really read it and mark it up and provide, kind of the quote cliff notes. I really prefer thug notes. If you haven't dealt with thug notes, you got to look at thug notes instead of cliff notes. They're way better, way more fun. But doing the thug notes of the other readings so that it isn't quite so much. And that has worked. I would always encourage everyone to read everything. I think that's, I'm not going to tell you, I queued up a reading because I don't think it's important. But that is how some people have managed it, is that they work with other people. And then when we get together, that discussion is extremely important. And then we also do look at different models. And that is an area where very specifically I ask people to delve into a particular area and then present that back to the rest of the group. And that is a way that we can cover many more topics than if it was just everybody has to do everything.
Thank you. That's helpful. It's an exciting course, actually. Thank you very much.
Anything else people want to ask? Great. Well, Denise, thank you for joining us today. We really look forward to the course. For those of you who have joined who are not currently in the program, if you have any questions, again, feel free to contact myself or Sanjeev or Robin. I believe you have all the information in terms of how to contact us. And Denise, we look forward to your course in the J term.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. Anything to add, Robin?
Just had to unmute myself. No, I'm always available, robin.husledge@unh.edu. And you can find all my contact information on our website as well. So
Great.
Happy
Thanks for joining us today, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Denise.